Welcome to the Creative Spaces Podcast. This is Kevin Booth and Rob Wenner, and we're talking to successful people about their careers, how they got started, and their surrounding environment that influences the creative process. In today's episode, we're talking to recording industry veteran Juanita Copeland.
And it's creating a space that they feel relaxed and comfortable. You know, giving them all the creature comforts and anything that's going to make them feel more at home, because this is their recording home. This is a sacred space that art is made. The art that's made here is going to long survive me and you and them. So I take it seriously because the devil really is in the details and it matters here. When I get a text from Alison Krauss saying, Juanita, you and your staff are A-list. You are the best in town. I just love you guys. Thank you so much for taking care of us. I mean, that just means the world to me.
Juanita has lived in Nashville since 1990 and has worked for Mercury Records, Almo Sounds Records, Pioneer Music Group, GMF Music, and Hippo Productions. She's the longtime president, COO and General Manager of the iconic recording studio Sound Emporium, one of Nashville's busiest and longest operating commercial studios, with clients that include Willie Nelson, Kacey Musgraves, Robert Plant and Alison Krauss, Chesney and Maren Morris, just to name a few. Her management style and leadership are the main reasons the multi-room studio continues to thrive to this day. Hi, Juanita. Thanks for joining us on Creative Spaces today.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
Great to see you, Juanita. Thank you.
Great to see you as well, Rob.
It was a long intro with a lot of accomplishments and many that were left out, to be honest. How have you been for the past year and a half?
Believe it or not, we were only down 6 weeks for COVID.
Wow.
And because people can't tour, we have been so busy.
Excellent.
Probably, in fact, last year we had our busiest year in the 26 years I've been here, the busiest year.
Wow.
And every year for the past probably 10 has been better than the year before. And I was worried that we were going to have a negative impact from COVID. I mean, when we had to close for those 6 weeks, we lost $100,000 like that.
Wow.
And I was really panic stricken, but we were very, very careful and put in a bunch of different measures, you know, changed out all of our filters and got the MERV 13 filters, and we have UV wands.
Wow.
And, you know, we still are requiring clients to wear masks indoors until we get a little farther down. Right. But we've been incredibly busy. But the best part of that is the amount of cool music that's coming out.
Yeah, excellent.
That is great, right?
Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool.
You've had a diverse career in the music business, starting with Mercury Records in Nashville. What drew you to this career path, and how'd you get started? Where was your break? Where was the transition point?
Well, I've always been in the admin side helping friends, and I just did it for fun. And all the men in my life have always been musicians as well, because it's the only people I was around were industry people. Mm-hmm. So in 1990, my then husband and he auditioned for a rock band up here that had some interest from Capitol Records. So we moved up here and he auditioned and got the part. And I was in administration. I believe I was considered the director of administration for a billing company at that point, just a medical billing company. And a friend of mine that worked at Mercury called and said, hey, I know you're overqualified for this, but I think you'd be perfect to join Mercury Records, but you have to start as receptionist, which meant I had to take a huge pay cut and start at $7.50 an hour.
Wow.
So, so I took the huge pay cut and started as receptionist, and that only lasted 4 months. I was promoted into business affairs, and then from there went into A&R administration and then publicity. Yeah. But the week that I started work there, we had Shania Twain and Billy Ray Cyrus were signed like a few months before. So we had just started working on the Achy Breaky Heart record, which was Some Gave All. And then, of course, Shania's first record, which didn't really do anything. But she would come and sit in the lobby when I was the receptionist, and we would just got to be good friends, and we chatted, and we have a love of animals, and got to be really close. So I got to be in Nashville right at the right time for the huge change that happened.
Yeah.
And the gentleman that hired me was a fellow named Harold Shedd. And Harold's the one that found, Billy Ray, Shania, Kentucky Headhunters. When he was at RCA, he found Alabama, KT Oslin. I mean, he's just an icon in this town that has not had enough recognition, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And in fact, he turns 90 on Saturday.
wow.
Oh, wow.
Awesome.
So,
Happy birthday
that's
to him.
how I got my foot in the door at Mercury. And then, administration is administration no matter what you're doing, whether you're working in a widget factory or if you're in a record label. So if you're good at what you do, which is attention to detail and organization, depending on what department you go into, it's going to serve you well.
Right.
And that's how I got my start.
But versus a widget, with this, you can apply your passion, right? There's a lot more
Exactly.
interest
And
in it.
Yeah, because music, in my life, music and animals have saved my life. The person that actually set me on this path to believe that I could do whatever I wanted to was someone you all are probably familiar with, and it was an amazing lady named Ann Wilson, the lead singer of Heart. Me and my friends met her back in 1978. My friend's father was the head of security in Huntsville, Alabama at the Von Braun Civic Center. And I had just gone through a really rough time in my life and actually had just gotten out of the hospital. I almost died, and I was kind of down and felt like I didn't matter in the world, and that, I was just a waste of human space, if you will. And my friends took me to the show, and after the show, we got to meet Ann and Nancy, and Ann was the first one we met. And believe it or not, and Rob wouldn't believe this because he knows me well, I was so shy, I wouldn't even look people in the eye. I would have my head down. And I was so shy, I wouldn't speak up, and was very insecure. And I looked a lot like I look now. My hair was almost exactly the same, except for I didn't have bangs. And I look like Marsha Brady, right? But Ann Wilson came out and spoke to me and my friends were in a band. My friend Jeannie sounded like Ann, and my friend Kathy played bass. And then we had some other people that weren't with us that night, but I managed them and helped book them. And, that's kind of what I did because I didn't play an instrument. And I didn't have the looks either. They were beautiful, and I just was the friend with the car.
Well, come on. That's an exaggeration.
Well, but that's that's how I saw myself.
Sure, right.
I was the transportation and the manager person, all at the age of 16, right?
Right.
So Ann Wilson comes out of this door, and now remember, this is 1978, and she had this head to toe leather catsuit on.
Wow.
And she just looked like 10 million bucks. And I briefly looked up and saw her, and I just started shaking because it's like, oh my God, that's my icon.
Wow.
Now, in Alabama in the late 70s, there were not a whole lot of positive female role models.
True.
Your mom was your role model, and my mother was just a hardworking, hillbilly that taught you to find a good man to take care of you. That wasn't my path. I didn't necessarily see that as my path. And, all the girls in school were picking out their boyfriends and their gingham curtains. And I'm sitting here, writing out tour schedules for my two 16-year-old friends that are touring all the colleges, right?
Thinking I might be able to take care of myself.
Exactly. So Ann comes out and walks up to me, and she's talking to my friends, and she sees that I've got my head down, and she comes over and starts talking to me and says, "Oh man, you have cool clothes. Yeah, you guys look different than the girls around here." And I'm like, oh my God, she's paying attention to me. And then Nancy walks out of the door next to where Ann is, and she's got a dog under her arm. Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I look up, and the dog starts wagging his tail, and Nancy comes up, and Ann introduces us. And Nancy takes her finger and puts it under my chin and lifts my face up.
Really?
And she said, "Oh my God, you have beautiful blue eyes. You should look people in the eyes. They're the windows to the soul." And I'm just like, oh my God, okay. And then she took my hair and she said, "Oh my God, your hair, it's like mine. You should perm it like mine." I said, "Okay." And I'm just like, I'm so taken aback and just blown
That's
away
amazing.
that someone's paying attention to me,
Yeah.
So then Ann Wilson gives me the advice that sets me on the path that I am today. And she said, so tell me what it's like growing up in Huntsville, Alabama. And I said, well, I've only been here since I was 9, and it's been hard because my dad was in the service, so I grew up in Hawaii and Germany. So I was dropped into the middle of racial, strife.
Yep.
And my best friends were black in Germany. I didn't know that there was a race thing. And I got beat up my first day in Alabama because I gravitated toward, my African American friends. And it was I hated school because of it. And Ann said, well, just be you, Juanita, just be you. And she said, stand strong in who you are and stand up tall. And if someone doesn't like who you are, F them. But she said the F word.
Yeah.
Now, I had never heard a woman use the F word up until this point.
Right.
So my eyes were like, boom. But I stood up taller, and I took every word that Ann Wilson said to me to heart, literally, because I felt like I didn't matter. And Ann Wilson made me feel like I mattered.
Yeah.
And it also taught me that your words are important and your words can impact someone in a very positive way. So she emboldened me, and she's responsible for this. And a couple of years ago, Roger Fisher, the original guitar player for Heart, and his brother Michael, who was the manager at the time and wrote the song, she wrote the song Magic Man about Michael. They came here for a studio tour, and I told them that story.
Wow.
And I met Roger that night, but it was just briefly. And they actually videotaped me telling that story, and they sent it to Ann.
Oh, that's awesome.
And like about a month later, Hart played Nashville. And at the time, I was part owner of the studio. This was before Mr. Shin gifted us to Lipscomb. So Ann told Roger and Michael she wanted to meet me. And we were supposed to have a private meet and greet, but something happened between the sisters the week before with Ann's husband and Nancy's sons. So there was kind of a rift in the camp, if you will. So it was a very quick meet and greet, but I did get to quickly tell her,
Oh, that's great.
thank you for putting me on this path.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
That's great.
So
amazing.
So
I know that was a long.
Oh no, that's
long sidebar
incredible.
that's an
there,
amazing
but-
story.
Yeah.
But she truly emboldened me and gave me the confidence and empowered me to be what you see before you. And, the way she treated me resonated, and it's how I've tried to treat people my entire career.
Yeah. And you had some belief in yourself because you followed that opportunity. Life is about opportunity. There's rarely a coincidence, Coincidence is just opportunity presenting itself. So, you were a little shy about yourself, but you ended up in that place in that time to get that message.
Well, Ann and Nancy said I could do it. So
Let's go.
I could not let them down.
No,
absolutely.
Come on.
Yeah.
Well, and now 2 of my dear friends are in her band, the Amazing Dogs.
Oh, really?
And yes, and they are here. They're studio musicians, actually, Tony Lucido and Tom Bukovac. And they're touring with her.
Right.
And they sent me, because they know that I'm, how much I love Heart, but they didn't know why. And there's a deeper layer to all of that. But I gave them the shortened version of it, and Tony said, Ann is going to be here in December, and we're going to invite you to come over and hang out. And I'm like, oh my God, I would die.
Yeah.
So
that's great.
But and Ann wasn't the only female that helped me. Harold Shedd's assistant, Joyce Triplett, was an older lady, and she had been with Harold all these years. My first day at Mercury, she sat down in front of me in the lobby, and she said, this is what you do, this is what you don't do. And I really respected her and took everything she said to heart. She told me, do not ever drink around anybody you work with. Do not ever date anybody you work with. And, because people judge women different than they judge men in this business. So be very mindful of your actions and your words and your behavior, because it matters.
Well, that's true, but unfortunate, right? But it's a truth, and you have to watch out for that.
Well, she set a very high bar, and we lost Joyce about 10 years ago, actually almost 20 years ago. And I was honored enough. Harold Shedd asked me to speak at her funeral. because she set such a high bar. And there's a few of us that were her proteges that are still in town and still standing. And the women that didn't listen to her advice are no longer around.
Wow.
Yeah. So once in the business, making, minimum wage, leaving a job, I assume that probably paid twice that.
Oh, 3 times, but yeah.
But finding something more passionate, did you ever have a moment you're like, I'm out of this. I should quit this. I should go back to administration and something that I make more money at, or within that 4 months even before you got advanced?
Yeah, I don't, at some point I will step aside, I have a kind of something I want to do. I believe in, because I volunteer for hospice, I believe in green funerals and home funerals and things like that. And I want to be a death doula. I want to help people as they exit this world because I know how important that work is. And that will be my exit strategy when I'm ready. But I have jokingly said that they will be wheeling me around here when I'm 99 in my wheelchair.
Yeah.
But, when the industry tells me it's time for me to go, like if I get fed up or if things change too much, because it's changed so much since 1990.
Sure.
If it gets to where I'm not enjoying it anymore and my passion is gone, I'll step aside and, usher in the next generation to take over. But, if you don't have a passion for this, you shouldn't be doing it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I didn't expect to talk about funerals, but green funerals is kind of interesting to me. I mean, certainly the way a lot of that is done is peculiar.
It's amazing. And, our funeral industry in this country is disgusting.
Yeah.
And we all, you think about it, you turn over a precious loved one to a stranger and they tell you what time you can grieve and what you can do. And it's all just so unnatural.
Yeah.
And, that all came about when I lost my sister in 2004 unexpectedly. And we had some nightmares and dealing with her funeral. And I educated myself and said, oh, no. This is not good.
Yeah.
And there was a point when Garth sold a studio that I thought I was going to actually exit into that and start, my death doula training. But the funeral lobby they're sneaky little suckers.
Oh, really?
You have to pay a lot of money to be a licensed funeral director, to be a death doula, even though you're not, sorry, but you're not. But you have to have a funeral director's license to talk to people about death, to talk to, about helping them. And it's just wrong, but it's a way for them to keep a handle on it. Because, that's the only industry that has an 800% markup on everything. It's just terrible.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's incredible. Yeah.
Like I said, I didn't expect to talk about that, but I think it's interesting to change it. I mean, I had a brother recently pass, or you family members pass, and when you go through that, you're thinking this is weird. Could be changed.
It's unnatural, and it only came about, the way that we do everything now came about at the turn of the century, when we had the wars and people needed to preserve bodies to get them home to ship them. But I don't like that anymore.
Yeah.
We don't need all that.
Yeah.
But people don't talk about it. Don't talk about death. Don't talk about what we're going to do with grandma when she's not here. But to me, it's just the opposite. You should be talking about it. And, and I know my music industry friends are like-minded, a lot of them. So, I think I'll have a captive audience when the time comes.
Yeah. Definitely. Definitely.
So we were going to ask the question if you had anybody you admired or modeled as you were coming up, and we know it's Ann Wilson, but there's some others too, right? Throughout the industry.
Oh yeah. Joyce Triplett, as far as women goes, Joyce Triplett was my mentor. And like I said, she was Harold Shedd's right arm. He loved her so much, and she was such a part of his life that he gave her a point on every record he produced.
Wow. Really?
Yeah. Yeah. And Joyce, much like me, didn't have children. She wasn't married. And her life was Harold Shedd in the music industry. And, he owned the Music Mill recording studio. Right. So when I started at Mercury, I spent a lot of time down there. And I saw how she took care of people at the Music Mill. And I learned from her that, the way that to treat people is like their family, not like their clients.
Right.
And that's how we do it here. There weren't a lot of other females that were in positions of power because it's just not the way it was. So, I mean, I had men, you know, like Garth Fundis is the one that hired me here. And when I first started here, he hired me as the operations manager for Almo Sounds, which was owned by Herb Alpert and Jerry Moss, who are just, oh my gosh, the most amazing men. One of the highlights of my career, we used to get flown up to off the coast of Seattle for our executive meetings every year. And it was at, Jerry's had an 80-acre farm up there. And this was where they filmed the Free Willy movies.
Oh, really?
And I love whales.
Yeah.
So
Cool.
I was just like a kid, you know, but Herb Alpert would come in as Jerry was talking, you know, you'd hear, and Herb Alpert would be serenading us. And I remember the first time I literally was pinching myself going, holy crap, is this real? Am I dreaming? So, you know, having that opportunity, you know, Garth believing in me to set up Almo Sounds. And then the way we set it up here in Nashville, they adopted that in New York, LA, and London. So I felt very honored. And I was even asked by Geffen Records to come out to their production meeting and explain to them how Nashville does what we do, because we have the business part way down. And anytime we've had another label, you know, if people are here from another city, they're blown away by how we do things.
And you've had the opportunity to work with a lot of bands and artists. Obviously, we list some of those in the beginning, you know, from Willie Nelson to Pharrell, just tons. And what types of things besides, you know, obviously treating them like family, that's an important thing too. And what other types of things inspire the creativity for the studio? And
well, you have to give them a space with a lot of vibe. That's the $1 million word in this industry is vibe. Because if they walk into a room and it feels like a dentist office, you know, but this is a customer service industry. Don't even be fooled into thinking it's anything but. And we go above and beyond. If we know that, you know, Robert wants a particular type of tea, Robert Plant, and Allison wants Fiji water, which that's as high maintenance as they get, believe it or not. You know, Willie Nelson wanted Folgers coffee and boiled eggs. You know, seriously. And all Pharrell wanted was purple Pedialyte and a picture of Carl Sagan on the left-hand side of the wall when he came in.
Awesome.
Not a big deal.
No, that's not.
But it's
no.
But paying attention to those little things and, you know, giving them all the creature comforts and anything that's going to make them feel more at home, because this is their recording home. This is a sacred space that art is made. And I take that seriously. And the art that's made here is going to long survive me and you and, you know, them. So I take it seriously because the little teeny tiny details, the devil really is in the details and it matters here. And, you know, when I get a text from Alison Krauss, they were here for the last almost week. They taped Fallon, they taped Colbert, they did the NPR Tiny Desk. And, but getting a text from her after the first night saying, Juanita, you and your staff are A-list. You are the best in town. I just love you guys. Thank you so much for taking care of us. I mean, that just means the world to me.
Absolutely.
And all of that matters. And, you know, when you're dealing with the woman who's won the most Grammys and the Golden God, you know, they're unassuming, but you have to make it comfortable and you have to anticipate need and you have to listen. You know, if you hear them complaining about something, they're not going to maybe complain to you, but you might overhear them saying something to the manager. You have to be on that. And it's creating a space that they feel relaxed and comfortable. And that's why, unless I'm invited in, I don't go in the room because I represent business. You know, I'm the business end of this. But luckily, Robert and Allison are truly like family and they invite me in. In the beginning, when they did Raising Sand, Allison doesn't allow anybody in for playback. Nobody. And Robert kept coming into my office. Oh, you have to come here. And I would go in there and I'd get, you know, Allison giving me mean mugs, and I'm going, oh no. So I had to pull her manager aside at the time and say, look, Robert is asking me to come in because he wants me to hear this. I can't say no to Robert. What do I do? And she said, I'll make sure that Allison knows.
Yeah.
So, it's like, I am very aware that that is a sacred space and you cannot bust the vibe. And I don't ever talk about money in the control room or the live room ever.
Right.
Yeah.
And I only try to, and if I have something I need to deal, I'll pull the manager out or pull the whoever. And I just not in front of the artists. The artists are there to create. And I'm not a creative person other than decorating the studio, which that's the other part of this.
Yeah.
They love the kitschy, weird stuff, you know?
I was going to say that. I mean, it's a commercial studio, quote unquote, right?
Yeah.
But it doesn't look like one. It looks like a cool place to hang out, whether it's one of the waiting rooms or the actual A room or B room or whatever.
It's by design. And I started redesigning every one of these rooms back in about 2012. And I've slowly, painstakingly redone, and things have to speak to me. And I've had other studios call and say, hey, who decorated your studio? And I said, well, that was me. Well, would you come decorate our studio? Well, no, I won't, because this is my home. I mean, my DNA is in the walls here because I've painted, I've, put door facings on, we were very hands-on here, and we just renovated, right before pandemic hit. We renovated our back private bathroom for the A room, and I stuccoed the walls. I put the floor down. I mean, very hands-on.
Yeah.
And it was appreciated because little did we know that how important that would be when the pandemic hit, having a private bathroom that Robert and Allison could use, and they didn't have to go into the lobby or go anywhere else. I had no idea. And I did it for them because we had 2 days over a weekend, and I wanted to surprise them. Robert had to fly back home for something, and then they were starting back up 2 days later, and me and my crew pulled it together.
Wow. That's great.
Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah. And the thing about, and then the other part of it too, is that over the years, the studio has maintained its, I won't say original setup, but, what drew people to that studio to begin with. Things were not changed around, and it's got a very certain, each room has got a certain sound to it when you're tracking, and that's what people are coming for too. Doesn't matter what kind of gear I shouldn't say that. It matters what kind of gear, because people have requests and things, but it really is the rooms that you have too, that are really important, and that you maintain that vibe of that room. And that's been really cool. That's a great thing.
Well, and you brought up a really good point about the gear. Every studio has gear, and every studio have humans that run the gear, but you have to stay on top of the gear, as you know, and that's a very expensive process.
Absolutely.
I mean, we spent $30,000 putting the ATCs in the A studio, and it was specifically for T-Bone because he wanted them, and he wanted ATC 110s, and then he wanted the ATC 25s because he wanted to melt your face when he did playback.
Which those do.
And he does. But a lot of people, studios most often are the home for producers. Like, people that own them are either producers or record labels. And that's their shop, So for us I'm not a producer, and I'm not, a record label, obviously, but I know what works, and I know what makes for a good experience, because at the end of our life, one thing I've learned, in addition to us being able to make great music here, you make memories. And that's what we take with us. We take our love and we take our memories when we leave this planet. And to have Robert Plant and Alison Krauss and Willie Nelson and Kenny Chesney and Pharrell and Little Big Town and Maren Morris, all these people have positive memories and experiences here, to me, is priceless.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the other thing we do here that's a little different is we try to keep our rates low enough that everyone can work here, not just Robert and Allison. We don't just cater to the big names, which, don't get me wrong, they are very important, but anyone can book the Sound Emporium.
Right.
You want to be a part of that breakthrough record no one expected too. Alabama Shakes, for example, something like that.
Yeah. And it matters, it matters. And the new record is coming out. It's called Raise the Roof, the Robert and Alison record. And they just did all of that press here. And the reason they wanted it done here is because they said this is their home. And we are a part of all of the press. They did 2 weeks of international press here.
Wow.
In this age of Zoom because they couldn't travel. And, the borders just opened up, Monday?
Yeah.
So, but we're everywhere. And on the NPR Tiny Desk, Allison made sure that they had our logo everywhere.
Very cool.
She said, and they did it all in the control room,
Really?
Rob. The A control room, they pulled everything out. Robert and Allison stood in there right next to the console.
Wow.
And the band was all around them in the control room. I'll take it.
Really. That's really cool. Very cool. Very, very cool.
I guess another one that I'm curious about is the smell. Do you work on scents in the rooms? A studio can get kind of stuffy with people in it. It's always closed.
Well, here's the deal. When Robert and Allison are here, and usually when T-Bone is here, he is burning that Palo Santo like nonstop. We will get him 20 sticks of that stuff. We also have candles, but you can't burn candles when T-Bone is here. He doesn't mind the Palo Santo, but he doesn't want any candles. But we usually, just for my 30-year career in the music industry, I always have a candle burning, you know, and, it's just kind of been a thing. So usually there's a candle burning at the front desk. We are meticulous about cleaning. And so, we keep things clean and fresh. And I just, that's kind of how you keep things smelling good. And people like to burn incense sometimes, not as much anymore. It's more like the Palo Santo is like a big deal that has become a thing in the last probably 5 years where I can smell it when I pull up in the parking lot. Now, there are other smells if you have Willie Nelson around. But,
and he prefers that smell.
And that you can also smell from the front parking lot. But,
he prefers that smell. Why shouldn't he?
That's awesome.
You've been so successful in a male-dominated field. You've mentioned some women that have helped you through there. What advice would you give to anyone else? Anyone else in the industry wanting to make their way?
Well, the first thing, and Rob probably knows this because I taught a class for Rob, but I always tell women to never use your sexuality to get a job, to get a promotion. Don't do it. And I give them the same advice I was given by Joyce Triplett. Don't date the people that you work with. Don't get drunk and drink and do whatever around because you're going to be judged. And I try to empower them because so many times, women are told what they can't do. And it's changing a lot. I've seen a lot of changes in the last 5 years. Like I've got 3 female engineers right now.
I was going to mention that.
And the engineer that is now T-Bone Burnett's private engineer in town is one of my former staff members, Rachel Moore. And she got that gig because I put her on the Robert and Alison record. That's the other gift that I have of knowing who will vibe with a project.
Huge thing.
And I put her on there as the assistant. And she did such a great job. T-Bone called and said, hey, I'm thinking about poaching one of your engineers. What do you think? Do you think Rachel would be a good choice? I said, yes.
Awesome.
So Rachel is now lead engineering a George and Tammy soundtrack that T-Bone is producing.
Oh, wow.
It's based on a movie that is from the book that Georgette, their daughter, wrote.
Right. Okay. Awesome.
So,
wow.
I have a really high bar as well. And I have a kind of a behavior that I tolerate and behavior I don't. And I try to share with women, you need to empower yourself. You need to believe in yourself because too many times we don't. And just like Ann Wilson lifted me up, I want to try to do that. And it's sometimes hard because, and not just women, but men can feel intimidated by a powerful woman or a strong woman. And that has been a problem in Nashville, is if you are a strong woman and you are successful, you're going to be the target. You're going to have haters. And, you know, Rachel has experienced a bit of that because male engineers feel like she's taking work from them. And I don't see it that way. You know, don't look at her as a female engineer. Look at her as a capable engineer.
Right.
And, you know, my 3 female engineers here now, you know, I empower them and try to give them positive feedback. But if they do something that I don't feel they should be doing, I'm going to tell them. And I don't play games. I'm very direct. That in itself can be intimidating, but I just believe that you can't get ahead if you're going to play games. I hate that. And that's been one of my biggest issues with Nashville and why I left working at the record labels. Because, you know, it was about jockeying for position and women backbiting other women. And I just detest that. I don't believe in it. I don't tolerate it here. You know, save the drama for your mama. It's not, you know, I just don't.
Yeah.
This is a creative space. But you know, you gotta, female engineers especially and female producers have to put up with a whole lot more crap. You know, when Rachel walks in a room, they think she's somebody's girlfriend. They never in a million years dream she's the one behind the console. She's going to be the one dialing in the sounds. So, you know, that'll change. And I've seen it change a lot in the last 5 years. So I'm hoping that continues.
Absolutely.
But it shouldn't, don't put a female in there to put a female in there. Put the person in there because they're the most qualified. Exactly. They just happen to be female.
And to those guys, you know, why is she in that chair? Well, maybe she's a better listener.
Well, yeah.
Overall, maybe she's better at listening to the producer, better at listening to the artist and the music itself.
Well, and I will say this, and this is no disrespect to any man out there, and the 2 on the screen included, we're caretakers. I've watched Rachel, and I mean, she was at behind the console during all of the tapings we did, and we had to set up live sound in the live room. So we had to have monitors and everything, and she was having to record, but we had monitors. It was insane.
Yeah, that's a lot.
But watching her, no matter what was thrown at her, she kept a positive attitude about it, and she had that can-do spirit. And instead of her using the talk back to relay something, she would walk out onto the floor and look at Robert and Allison
and talk to them directly
and explain to them what was going on. So, you know, being a good communicator, sometimes I feel females have the upper hand for that, just because of the mom role that most of them have to play. So, you know, that's something that I have ingrained in all of my female engineers and all my engineers in general, but especially the females. Be a good communicator because, you know, and not being afraid to sometimes kind of eat crow just to save the vibe of a session. Because if something's going, it's not whether something's going to go wrong. It's going to go wrong, but it's how you deal with it.
Exactly.
And if you lose your crap, it's kind of like when you're on an airplane. And if you see the stewardess getting nervous, no,
I'm out of here.
So, exactly. Then you're like, oh, we're doomed. But, you know, so that's kind of, you know, that's kind of my mode of operation.
Awesome. Well, I hope there's some listeners out there for this because that's some great information. You know, some great advice. Man. So recent projects at Sound Emporium, there's a lot of them, aren't there? So Little Big Town you mentioned, right?
And we've got some amazing stuff. Billy String's new record was cut here. LV Shane was done here. Eric Gales has a new project that was done here. I mean,
of course,
we
Robert
are
and Allison,
so
by
lucky.
the time this posts, that'll probably be out. It's on pre-release.
Yeah, the
now.
record comes out the 19th. A couple of singles are out now. But yeah, the release date is November 19th, and we are so proud and so excited, and all of the press so far and all the critics are really loving it.
Awesome.
And of course I've worn it out. And I've probably made my poor staff, this has been their earworm since the label sent me it. And, but it is so good. It's better than Raising Sand. Wow. And one of the writers said, just go ahead and give them all the Grammys because they're going to win them anyway. So just hand it to them. Don't even have anybody else in the category. Just hand them all the Grammys. Cool. But it's better than Raising Sand. And I did not think that was possible.
No, that's pretty
amazing.
Really good. Yeah.
that
I mean,
set a
what
high
a bar to
Yeah,
set, right?
definitely.
Oh,
Well, you just raised the roof then.
well, heck yeah.
And
maybe that's why they chose that title.
Yeah,
I don't
maybe.
know.
Yeah.
And some diverse artists too, right? Billy Strings.
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
You look at all of those and it's like Billy Strings is bluegrass. And then you've got Eric Gales, which is, he's blues R&B. And of course, Robert and Allison is in a genre all on their own.
Right.
So, country is probably the smallest genre that we do. We do have Kacey Musgraves and Maren Morris have both did their big records here, but, and Kenny Chesney when we're available, because that's the other thing. We're right now running 98 and 99% booked.
That's awesome.
Oh.
Which is great. But then when I have people like Kenny who want to get in here to do their next record and I have to say no, it's like,
you miss out on opportunities, right? And they have to go somewhere else.
Yeah, totally.
And, and some rock, right? You're a rock fan yourself.
Pop Evil did a record here that the first single they released called Waking Lions went to #1. They were here for 6 weeks and then we have a band called Blacktop Mojo that has done a couple of records here that are rock. We've actually had bands from Greece, New Zealand, and Australia, all heavy duty rock bands that have recorded here. And we have a guy in where was he from? Iceland, I think, or Sweden. He's like the big rock star guy there. And he came here and did his record because he said he wanted the Nashville experience. And we hired the band for him and he was just blown away.
Wow.
Roland Pierre Humbert is his name. And he's like the rock guy over there. And his big record was done here.
Cool. That's awesome.
And then of course you have, we do have R&B people and Pharrell, was here for a couple of weeks and he rented out the whole building because he didn't want anyone else here.
Oh, wow. Well, that's another thing that happens too, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Brittany Howard has done some of her solo stuff here and we just love her. She's so talented.
Yeah. Amazing talent.
Yeah.
Wow.
And Allison Russell, that's another one I was going to mention. Allison's record came out, I think, earlier this year. But she's in a whole genre by herself, too. She's just amazing.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Very cool.
That's great. And all the rooms probably have acoustic treatment or have some attention's been paid to the acoustics. It isn't obvious because the way you decorate and design the rooms, which is great. All those kind of things are important, but they should get out of the way.
Oh, absolutely.
They should get out of the way, just like the gear or anything else, so that you can create. Or any rooms have any problems or anything that you can think of that had to be addressed over the years acoustically?
When Cowboy redid the A room back in '73, there was a problem because when he first built that room, he kind of made it look like the Wrecking Crew out in LA. It looked, if you see the pictures of the A room from then, it looks like you think you're like it's an LA studio. And after he had Jim Tilton come in and redecorate the B room, which I'll tell you a funny story about that in a second, but he walked into the A room and didn't like the way it sounded, so he brought in all that barnwood and he redesigned that whole room with barnwood. Wow. And the first time Robert Plant walked in there, he looked around and he said, "Oh, look, it's the set from Hee Haw." No. And but so there was a problem in there with he wanted it to be very warm sounding. And the difference, and Rob knows this because he's been in both rooms, the A room has a very muted, warm sound to it. The B room has the best live drum sound on the planet. Absolutely. I mean, it is so vibrant and that's by design. And Garth Fundus, when he bought the studio in 1991, he took away the second floor because I don't know if you guys know, but the B room was Cowboy Jack's original house. Yeah. And the bottom floor he turned into the studio. The upper floor was his party palace and where he lived. And when Garth started here in 1971 as a gopher, and he was, the protege of Cowboy Jack, and he worked for Cowboy Jack many times. And then he bought the studio in 1991 after his success with Trisha Yearwood, and She's in Love with the Boy. So when he bought the studio, he decided he didn't like the cave feel of the B room. So he took away the second floor and made
opened
this
it all
giant
up.
vaulted
Yeah.
ceiling.
Yeah.
So it has really made the acoustics in there just
Yeah, it's
incredible.
awesome room.
You know,
Awesome room.
Yeah, a little history. Cowboy is Cowboy Jack Clement, right? He built the studio, or
Yes.
Studio A, in '69. He worked at
Yes.
Sun Records for Sam Phillips. And
Yes, and actually he worked for and was fired by Sam Phillips 5 times. And the final time that he was fired is because Sam drove by, and you know how Sun has the glass and you could see into
Yeah.
the studio. He drove by one night after dinner and saw Cowboy Jack and Jerry Lee Lewis tap dancing on the console and hitting popping the buttons with their toes and knocking them off.
man.
And he walked in and fired Cowboy on the spot, which was a good thing because at that point, Cowboy went back to Texas and he found Don Williams and Charlie Pride and brought them back to Nashville. And I don't know if you guys know, but he was the first independent producer in town that wasn't attached to a studio or a record label.
Really?
Back then, you had to be one or the other.
Right.
Wow.
And when he bought the house here in the early 60s or mid 60s, it was a 1930s house and it was nondescript. But he also was the first person that I know of, and I could be wrong, and someone can correct me, but he's probably one of the first people that had a home studio because he turned the lower half of that house into a studio.
Sure.
And, you know, Todd Rundgren was working here with him before he built the Studio A. And then Todd was our first client in the Studio A. And I don't know if you guys noticed on our website, I spent 9 years, me and Rachel actually spent many 9 years putting together a searchable database. So you can put someone, it's sorted by artist, producer, engineer, and assistant engineer. You can put their name in there and everything they've done here going back to 1969 will come up.
Yeah,
Very
that's
cool.
on the website, the data page,
Yeah.
right?
Yes,
People
yes.
I
should
was
check
flipping
that
through
out.
that. It's incredible.
Yeah.
Just
It's
incredible.
awesome. And it took 9 years. And back in the day, and we've got all the books going all the way back to 1969.
Wow.
They're still in our A room.
Wow.
But the problem was back then, people would call, you know, Judy from Capitol would call. And instead of her putting that she was, you know, recording Donnie and Marie, she would put Judy from Capitol. You know what I mean?
Oh.
And the person that was booking the studio, if they didn't put good information in, we didn't have good information for the database. And a lot of times it was just the name of the person that booked it. And sometimes we would be able to figure out based on, you know, Garth Fundus would help me. Billy Sherrill came in and helped me with some stuff because we just couldn't put, like, I didn't know that Marie Osmond did the song Paper Roses here.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow.
Which when I was a kid was one of my favorite
Oh, yeah.
songs. And I had no idea because it was under Sonny James, which was a producer,
right.
but it just said Sonny James session.
Yeah.
And when Waylon and Willie did Mamas Don't Let Your Babies Grow Up to Be Cowboys, one of the versions of it here, they also had put in there, they just put Waylon song. So we didn't know, you know, that was the version of Mama's Don't. And
Wow.
bless Willie's heart, every time he comes here, he tells me that. He says, Juanita, you know we did Mamas Don't Let Your Babies right there.
Yeah.
He's so just adorable. I love him.
Absolutely.
Wow. Here's a last question, possibly, but one we like to throw in for fun. Is there something else interesting or unexpected about you that people don't know, that we haven't talked about? Something outside of the audio world, your hobbies or interests, activities?
Just my passion for roller skating.
Awesome.
You know, I love roller skating. I roller skate every chance I get. I'll go out to the park. I'll go to the rink, and it's roller boogie. It's not just, you know, the boring, you know, skate.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, and the other thing is, at the age of 60 years old, I will be finally getting my associate's degree. I'm in school right now,
wow.
and I actually got invited to join Pi Theta Kappa. I'm going to graduate with honors.
Awesome.
So
Congratulations.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Excellent. Excellent.
yeah, I did not know that 12 hours a semester was considered full time. So I'm full time student, and I work 50 plus hours a week.
Taking it easy.
And
Well, life is for living.
That's right.
You know, we don't know how long we're going to be here. Might as well.
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly.
Might as well make it all
That's right.
count.
So
You know.
right.
just adding another
right.
associate's degree to your potential master's degree, right? For studio,
Yeah, there you go.
for running studios and all the other stuff you've done. You know,
Well, they gave
honorary
me
degree.
18 hours credit for my experience, but believe it or not, the one class they would not give me experience credit for is music.
Oh no. Really?
Yep. And I think it had to do with the dean, who is from Harvard and not really a music person. And she just assumed that I didn't know anything, like I didn't know how to read music. And she didn't know that I played clarinet and oboe when I was in high school, and I marched in President Carter's inaugural and marching band.
Oh, wow.
And, you know, she didn't know that I know music.
Right.
And so my reply to my dean was, ask her if she can read a Nashville numbers
Yeah,
chart.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the answer was
Answer's
no.
no. Yeah.
And how fast can you pull together a group of musicians real quick to do a session?
Yeah. Yeah, because
Ask
that's
them
the
that.
other little tidbit that I offer clients here is, you know, if someone calls me like Pierre did from Sweden and said, hey, I want to hire musicians. If they called them, the musicians aren't going to call back some weirdo from Sweden, but you know, that they didn't know, even though I love Pierre dearly.
Yeah.
But so we're one-stop shop. We can do everything. We can do as little as you want or as much as you want. And my 30-year experience and history with all these musicians, they know you're going to get paid and you're going to get taken care of. So part
That's
of
right.
it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's great.
Excellent.
You marched in the inaugural for President Carter.
I did.
Was it in high school? Or?
It was so amazing. And he was so nice. So nice. And it was one of the highlights of my life.
Was that in DC or
you know,
in Washington?
it was in DC, Washington, DC. They invited, of course, there's always a band from every state.
Yeah.
And our marching band, our teacher was a fellow named Bob Backus, and he was so amazing. The band director, Bob Backus, and I loved him so much, and he had no idea how much band saved my life and just meant so much to me. And I was able to travel all these places with band and it opened my horizons. And I actually, a couple years ago, we had our our band 30-year anniversary. And I went down to Huntsville and pulled him aside and gave him a card and a swag bag from the studio. And I said, you set me on this path. And, you know, as far as the music and being able to do some of what I do with the music part of it and being able to read music and understand. And I thank you for that, because the music saved my life, along with my love of music was understanding how important. I was one of those weird people that would go run and get the album and look at all the credits. I wanted to know who produced it. I wanted to know who wrote it, who played on it. And it was all because of my band director kind of planting that seed of how important all that was. Well, the good thing is, like, the vinyl is making a comeback, which is good. And Robert and Allison gave me, they presented me a copy of the vinyl that they had all signed and the band had signed. And they opened it up and pointed to the special thanks. And the second person there was me. And I just cried.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was for me and my staff.
Awesome.
And it said, you know, special thanks to Juanita Copeland and the staff of Sound Emporium. And I read everything on the inside of that album, just like I did for the last 50 something years, you know, and, you know, all of that stuff was important. And that's why I started seeing the trend, because I do production assistant work too for Garth Fundis and Sturgill Simpson and Chad Carlson. And I noticed that when we would turn in label copy, I would always ask them if they wanted lyrics. And the trend of the last 10 years has been, no, they don't want to print lyrics. They don't want, you know, when I was at Mercury, Kentucky Headhunters, when we would do their records, they would have 6 pages. And you know how you fold out the book in the CD? There would be 6 panels of thank yous.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah.
And I was the one that had to proofread all that. But that was
awesome.
That was just part of it, you know, and all getting all the label copy and liner notes and stuff. That was what I did in A&R administration. And it was just, it was full circle for me, because as a kid, I would, while all my friends were listening to Led Zeppelin, yes, I did listen to that, but I also would grab the Paul Williams record because he was such an amazing songwriter. And I wanted to read every single lyric and listen to every single song and all the instruments and
who was playing.
It's important.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Totally important. It's all part of it. It's the whole package.
Absolutely.
Well, you can find out more about Juanita and Sound Emporium Studios on their website, soundemporiumstudios.com. Juanita, thanks for joining us today on Creative Spaces, and we appreciate you taking the time to talk to us. It was really
well. Thank you guys so much for having me.
Thank you, Juanita. Awesome again to see you and hear you. Take care. We'll talk to you soon.